It's always nice to be with you again. As Choa introduced me, my name is Mukei. I am a novice Zen priest at the Village Zendo, and currently I am the leader for our people of color Sangha at the Village Zendo. We've been in existence 7 years, and although we're on our listserv is long, our members are very small who attend our sits, but virtually we're online. But I wanted to spend some time with you with a question that was put to me by a BIPOC person. How do you keep turning towards the suffering of racialization and racism? And when I was asked that question, of course, my mouth dropped open, and I've been sitting with that subsequently. But I had to really think about racialization and racism. How do I keep turning towards it? And I thought it was an interesting point. How do you keep turning towards as opposed to turning away? And in the context of practice, how do we keep turning towards? And racialization, I mean, and most of us probably on this in this talk have experienced it. You talk so well. Where are you from? Or you've gone into a store as a person of color, and the manager or whoever is following you closely around and asking, "Can I help you?" Or you're getting onto an elevator and a person who is white might all of a sudden clutch their purse if they're a woman, or maybe if it's a man, they might clutch something of themselves to their person. And I wish I had an easy answer to how do I turn towards, but it is something I can speak of from my own experience that I encounter on a daily basis. I have been fortunate enough that no one has arrested me and pulled me over and asked to see my ID. But it's in these little bit of moments that I've experienced this. You know, when you see a person of color, there are assumptions that are made. And as a Zen priest, I find that in my own Sangha at times, still learning the ropes, that the feeling I come away with at times, like learning to the Eno part for a service, immediately after the service is over, there's a grouping that comes towards me that says, you know, you should have done this and you should have done that, or you should have said this and you should have said that. And I notice, well, how come when somebody is white, they're not descending on them that way? It's almost like there's a feeling of gatekeeping. You know, what is it that is allowed in, and what is kept out? And I'm sure maybe some of the women in this talk may experience the same thing. It's about power. And again, it's not something that I wish I could find a magic formula to kind of get rid of it, but it's always, for me, present. And in my conversation with Cho during the week, I had mentioned there's a sutra by on a bodhisattva, and I'll try my best to pronounce the name, Vimalakirti, which I think talks a little bit about how we turn towards racialization and racism. Vimalakirti is not a super fantastic bodhisattva. He was a layman. And as I mentioned, he's not so fantastic like Samantrabhadra or Maitreya. But he's a layman. And it's recorded that he was a devout follower of Shakyamuni. And most of his if you see him in the artwork, he's wears white robes, and he's usually residing or leaning on something. And the reason why he's leaning on something is because he's ill, or so the sutra tells us. But what we know a little bit about him is that he was married, he had a son, he had a harem and servants, so he was very wealthy. But he was a staunch practitioner, and he supposedly was known to go into various circles to spread the Dharma. He would go to gambling halls or hang out with Wall Street types. He would go to the philosophers, he would go to the scientists, he would even go to brothels. And his point was to teaching the right mindfulness about how to be present in the world. And the sutra begins with Shakyamuni gets a telepathic message that Vimalakirti is ill. So he turns to his many bodhisattvas and he says, he's not well. Can one of you go and visit him? And immediately all the bodhisattvas start saying, well, no, I don't want to go and see him. I don't want to go and see him. I don't want to. And so Shakyamuni is curious. And it seems that they've all these bodhisattvas who find their reasons for not visiting him are because they've all had encounters with him. And he was always explaining the truth in these particular bodhisattvas. Until Manjushri makes a point of going to see him. And he asks, well, how are you feeling? And Vimalakirti says, I'm not well. When you think about how many times that you go to see someone, do you ask how a person is doing? Are you asking really, or is that the way you make conversation? The whole point of the sutra is, and it's worth a read because there is a female goddess in it, and the whole exchange about who can be a bodhisattva. There's a bodhisattva male or a bodhisattva female, and Vimalakirti handles that pretty well. But my point being is that the sutra points out that we're all dis-ease. We're all dis-ease. And how do we use our dis-ease to heal? Bodhisattvas, and the way the sutra is presented, are the ones who, although they take vows to help all sentient beings, don't fully live into that vow. They find a reason to distance themselves. I mean, many times when I've been the only one for a while in my Sangha here in New York, I mean, no one ever came over and asked me how I was doing. How am I getting along? I felt quite isolated. I remember going on a retreat. I was the only person of color. I was the Cheatin for that. That's taking care of the altars. And we were up in Connecticut. And the site that we were at, they had an event. And there were the majority of the audience was white. And I had this thought. I had to be very careful about how I moved during the retreat. I didn't feel I could be myself. I could walk. And I turned to a friend of mine, a woman who was white, and I said, can you walk with me? Because I need to get some flowers to help decorate the altars. And she couldn't understand why I was asking, but then again, it's similar to going into a store. You're the only person of color, and someone walking around asking, can I help you? Can I help you? The feeling is, you're there to steal, so whatever you're going to do, I'm going to catch you in the process. And I remember sitting with that feeling, and I shared it in Dokusan during the retreat. And the teacher had a difficult time understanding what I was going through. But bodhisattvas, show up, and How are you doing? We don't ask that question, or some don't ask that question. We distance ourselves away. So how do we use our dis-ease to heal? I can't explain to you what to do about racism. I don't feel that's my job. But because I feel that's something each and every one of you would need to understand. But can our practice allow ourselves to understand the pain, immerse ourselves in the pain that I may feel, or a person who's who's marginalized may feel because of education, for gender, economy, you name it? Can we use ourselves to be a source of healing, our illnesses to be a source of healing? Too often our texts, I think we interpret our text as it's either black or white. It's either done this way or it's done that way. And I think somewhere, as I say this, we may do a bit of our own gatekeeping about who comes into our practice or not. But I do feel, and I'm challenged every day to be mindful that it's about turning towards, not turning away. So I would, at this point, like to hear your voices about how do you turn toward racialization and racism. We have a bodhisattva who uses his illness to educate his audience. The entire sutra, by the way, it takes place in his sick room when Manjushri goes to see him. So all the other bodhisattvas visit the sick room to see how Manjushri is going to be address the issue of Virmakhitri's illness. They're onlookers. How does that question get answered? And I think sometimes it maybe be the same thing we do sometimes also. Maybe we go to see how this person is answering that question or answering that concern. But are we really involved, or are we just observers? So again, I open it up to you. Where are you? Are you turning towards, or are you turning away?